Talking about a universe in which we see the complexity of self-awareness, and human being seems to be the top of in that ladder, and the one entity that brought about this change, you would not expect to be lesser of self-aware than us.
I suppose, or I suppose not. I mean, I wouldn't.
Now think about it, the universe with its laws, so many constants with the way it's operating, that requires a lot of knowledge and wisdom in terms of how the universe is governing. Why doesn't everything just fall apart? Because there seems to be some organization behind all of this and a controller behind all of our physical laws. That demonstrates.
I would call that the laws of nature. If you want to call it the will of a creator, then we are talking about the same things with a different name.
Yeah, it's just different, semantically different names. But at least we understand conceptually that the entity that brought about this change is more self-aware than a fly or even human beings.
You say an entity, I say an event, but again, I suppose we're talking about the same.
Yeah, but if you think about your event, your event is just bringing about change and making all that complex, harmonious, designs in this universe.
Yeah.
Some people who don't acknowledge the design in the universe, they say this is an illusion. But if you think about it, there are many things that we see clearly that they're evident that they're designed in the way they are. Whether you like it or not.
You say designed, I would say governed by laws, but again, we're talking about the same thing.
Exactly.
Just different words.
I agree. So that is why we say the entity that is a being who is self-aware, has a will and the ability, the intention to bring about these things.
If you want to use that terminology, then yes, I agree with you. That's not how I would phrase it, but we do seem to be talking about the same thing.
Because
with
what I'm
words.
trying to go to the point is where it's a personalized agent. It's a personal agent. It's not just an entity that's just simply there, not aware of anything, and things happen by itself. But there seems to be some kind of organized direction to an event, organized course of action that's been taking place and so on. So that demonstrates to me a personal cause of our universe, a personal cause of someone who is self-aware with knowledge, will, wisdom and power.
I mean, that's not how I would describe it, but I do feel like the way I would describe it matches your description with different words, which mean different things to me personally. But that doesn't make mine any more or less correct than yours, because we both don't have a choice. We have to live in the same universe.
What was the reason that universe was originated by this entity?
I honestly, if it was originated by an entity or what I would call an event, I have no idea why.
Do you at least agree that there has to be a reason?
Not necessarily. I don't agree there has to be a reason, but if you think that there is a reason and a grand design,
so all of this,
you may be correct and I may be wrong.
Yeah, but all of this that you see, that the grandeur of our universe.
Don't get me wrong. I think if it's part of a grand design, then that's beautiful. If all of this came about because there's no design, and this whole thing is because of random chance, and from this random chance we've found a solar system and a planet that now sustains a life that's self-aware enough to hold a conversation, I think there's something really beautiful about that as well.
Yeah, but if you think about randomness, an entity that is not self-aware of its existence and yet is bringing about change, it has the ability to do things. To me, I mean, that I find it very difficult to accept logically and reasonably. That how do you have? It's like this, you have all these pieces of equipment.
Sure.
On a table, for example.
Yeah.
Would it ever become a bicycle like this?
Logically, probably not.
Because there seems to be some organization happening. Your bike has been organized to a level with knowledge, wisdom, and design in mind, that it needs to serve a particular purpose, right? It's not like triangular or square in terms of the wheel. It's circular. So if you have all the components of this universe, it will just simply be there. It will never come to this organization as we see the universe.
True.
That is why we are saying the intent and the will and transformation that we see is coming from a self-aware, conscious, knowledgeable originator.
I mean, if that's the way you want to look at it, then...
How do you see it otherwise? Careful.
I mean, as far as we know, humans are the highest level of consciousness that can exert their will on the world, as far as we know. If there is a higher level of consciousness beyond this that is influencing everything, I mean, first of all, in some cases they're doing a really bad job of it.
In what way?
Well, there's a lot of suffering. If the grand design is supposed to be happiness and harmony, then they are.
Why are you assuming the grand scheme is to originate or create a universe where there is no free will and there's no evil and there's no suffering?
I mean,
why do you assume that?
I mean, it would be nice that if there is a grand designer and a grand designer, it's a nice idea that they're, somewhat pleasant. Otherwise, if we just play things of like a...
Do you think if you had a universe in which there was no suffering, it automatically will make people be convinced that this is because there is a creator? Would happiness automatically default to the existence of a creator? Would suffering somehow demonstrate there is no creator? Or...
I don't know, because personally I've never suffered that much. I've been lucky enough to be born in a country that means I don't really want for any basic, I've never suffered on like an animal-human level.
Sure.
If you are somebody that's dying of a disease that in this country is preventable, if you ask them, they're dying of thirst when I live in a country where I have access to ready water, if you then ask them the same question, like, do you think this suffering is warranted by a designer, I imagine you get a very, very angry response, because that's, so asking me this and asking someone else this is not a...
But that's where, when as Muslims, we have a different interpretation to, what other people think about what suffering is. Because, the problem of suffering, people misunderstand exactly how to reconcile this. If we are free will, there's two things. One is things within the natural law which takes its course and action. For example, there are earthquakes, there are tsunamis. They will happen because of the way the world is constructed. Now, if I'm in a particular region where there's going to be a volcano, of course, it's because of its natural course of events. But there are things which are something that I can inflict on others in form of suffering. For example, if I hit someone and inflict pain, this is me causing that event. It's not the natural course of action that is within the
so you've gone
natural
to
law.
You're saying natural course of action.
I'm talking about natural laws, as well as what we can inflict and we can do. For example, when we create holes in the ozone layer and we get skin cancer because of that, because all this bad radiation comes through and we get skin cancer, we are partly responsible because we have done that. What, as Muslims, our concept of God is that God has created this universe and put a balance. He says, don't transgress this balance. Don't disturb and, make it imbalance. So there's always going to be, don't pollute the air, don't pollute the ocean, don't pollute the sea, and so on and so forth.
Sure.
And in terms of human suffering and infliction of human suffering, don't kill, don't rape, don't cheat, don't oppress. All of these things so that we can have a life in which it will not be miserable. So our concept of suffering exists is because we are endowed with also free will. If there is no free will, then there's a different question altogether. The fact that we are created with free will, it means we have the ability to a limited extent to do things which are bad, to things which may be evil. For example, if someone stabs someone with a knife and kills someone, that's an evil action.
Yeah.
Now, this is because of our free will. Now, imagine a world in which every time someone wants to do something evil, like stabbing with a knife, and then it becomes like nice butterflies and goes away, and nothing happens. That means anyone who wants to do something evil, for example, it just doesn't happen. It becomes good. Do they have free will? The free will is redundant here because they have no free will to do what they're supposed to do.
Sure.
Yeah. So the very existence of free will means, the Creator has created us in such a way, but told us not to do these things, but He allows these things to manifest in reality. And that's why we see these actions. So suffering is not necessarily, something that is against the existence of a creator or a benevolent creator or a merciful creator is not understanding the wisdom of having us free will.
Okay. Not understanding the wisdom of suffering, fair enough. But you said, what if you lived somewhere where a volcano erupted? Okay. And you said that you called it, I don't know, the course of nature or something.
Go away somewhere else when there is no earthquakes and volcanoes, because God did not. No, the Creator did not create human beings to only live with artificial boundaries and say you need a visa to come in. We've set ourselves for our own greed or whatever reasons maybe. So people who are in an area in which there are all these problems, we have made them. We have made isolated borders.
Yeah. So, but then why has nothing been done about it? Because surely the balance is very far out of balance.
That is where when you look at the Islamic polity, the Islamic governance system, in which it doesn't have any boundaries. When the Islamic State, for example, not the Islamic State of IS and ISIS, but the governance system is such that it is what's this called? It goes beyond the fields of boundaries. It will be wherever, everywhere Muslims are within that particular geographical region, they're within the Islamic governance. So if you find someone in Australia, someone in America or wherever, and people have these problems living there, just relocate them elsewhere. This is how it will be. You don't have to live in an area prone to these natural disasters. We have created artificial boundaries ourselves.
Yeah, but I mean they're enforced by by people with so much power that nothing
So
can be
we
done
have
about.
made ourselves into nation states, divided ourselves into several, hundreds of nation states, and this is how things are. But when you think about Islam, for example, as it was before at one point, before it got dismantled in 1924, it was a pan, region, spanning from one area in the east to the west, north to the south, and so on.
Sure.
So we need a polity or system of governance in which it will be like this, where people live in an umbrella state in which you don't have to say, okay, you know what, I am from Philippines and I have to live in that region only. You don't have to. You can just move somewhere else where it's safe.
Sure.
Yeah. So, as Muslims, we have a concept of God, that this concept is that the Creator that we talked about is absolutely perfect. He's a perfect being, free from all imperfections. And this is what you will even logically think about it. Like, if there is this creation, it has to be contingent upon something that is necessary, and that necessary being will be perfect or absolute, free from all imperfections, because nothing will be restricting the perfection of that being.
I mean, if you're defining the creator as perfect because it encompasses everything, so every imperfection is actually part of the design. Therefore,
so the universe is fit for its purpose. It doesn't mean, for example, when we get a cut on our hand or somewhere, right? Do you feel pain?
Yeah.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Depends on how you look at it. It doesn't feel nice to me, but it lets me know I've hurt my hand and I can do something about it. So
exactly. So it's not necessarily evil.
Okay.
Because it has a purpose. The purpose is to alert you that something's gone wrong with you. Like, when you get burned, what happens when you have a first degree burn and a second degree burn and a third degree burn? If you have burnt all your nerve endings, you don't feel any pain anymore.
Sure.
Yeah? Because your nerve ending's gone. Yeah. But if you have a little bit of burn, we realize there's something differently wrong. You retract your hand, your leg, something, because that is not good for you. So pain is not necessarily bad, but inflicting pain on others willingly, this is what we say should be avoided. That's why Islam differentiates between the pain that is there in the world in terms of to make us understand what is not pain. What is
you can't have light without dark. You can't
exactly. So the diametric opposites are there for us to contrast and understand and to compare what is good. You can't really appreciate happiness unless you know what suffering is to a certain extent. Because
I agree with that.
Exactly. So that's why in this particular world, the Quran tells us this is why we have the existence of this reality, But in the next life, in the hereafter, there will no be such existence of any of these kind of evil and suffering. All of it will be removed. Yeah?
It's a nice thought, isn't it?
Yeah. So that's a life that has been created for a purpose, so that we can fulfill, the purpose of our creation, and then when we are fulfilling it, then we know what we deserve in our next life.
I mean, if that, so I'm not saying that won't, or that isn't true, but
But does that make sense, though? At least?
I mean, I can see the logic behind it, and as I said, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's not true. It's not something that I'm personally convinced by, but
Sure.
I try and live in a way that.
So that's
I
one of
think
the
there's
reason-
important lessons to be taken from the teachings, regardless of whether or not you follow them.
Yeah. So that's one of the reasons why we say when we look at the concept of a creator or the concept of a religion or our divine scripture, and when we examine it, if it's coherent, if it makes sense, if it's sensible, then this is how we live our life. Because we know the truth will be like that. Because there is truth. It's not that there is no truth out there. There is truth, and one can arrive at this truth by examining, by reflecting, by pondering, and making their own decisions. So the Quran, for example, how do I know the Quran is indeed a communication from this creator? Firstly, I need to understand that this creator, this entity, is able to communicate. If I don't have that understanding, then there's no point for me to look at any communication, any scripture, any book that might be claiming to be from this creator. But I do understand I am capable of communication. Many other living beings are capable of communication, and the universe reflects that information is something that is all rooted and embedded within our universe. Information. Why do I expect that the creator, the originator, is less of someone who can communicate with information? It just doesn't simply make sense to me that there cannot be this transfer of information from the creator to the created when the information is all abound. It's like embedded within the fabric of our universe.
True, but you're also describing the scientists. You are aware of that, right?
Yeah, but scientists, they have taken a dogmatic position in not believing in creator, and there are scientists who have taken a dogmatic position to accept the creator.
I'm not saying that science and religion are opposite.
Yeah.
I mean, there are loads of examples of people who follow one, follow the other, or follow both. And that doesn't make them any more or less wrong.
Yeah. So the example I give you about pain, in fact, the Quran talks about how, you see, when some people, those who were arrogant enough and stubborn enough to reject the truth after knowing it, when they are punished in hellfire, in the afterlife, when their skin is roasted through in fire, they're given fresh skin so that they can they can feel the punishment. And if you think about it, our understanding of pain receptors and pain, how pain is felt, is something that is not some people really appreciated until very recently. We're talking about maybe 200 years to the most, where we discovered all our receptors are just embedded within the skin.
Sure.
And the Quran is highlighting to the point that to make them feel the pain of punishment, when they're burnt in a hellfire, they're regrown fresh skin every time the skin is roasted through.
Yeah.
Just to really think the one who is threatening you with a punishment is also giving you a mechanism that he's all aware how the punishment is going to be inflicted, how people experience pain. If you think about it, if it wasn't from someone who is very wise and knowledgeable in terms of the source of this information, you would just say, you're going to end in hellfire and that's it. But clever people might say, when I'm roasted through and if I'm burnt, I get third-degree burn, I'm not going to feel any more pain anymore. Because I won't have the pain receptors, and that's it. I just live there without any pain. But the Quran gives us these pointers to reflect on, even at the mechanism of how we can experience pain. Okay?